Hello and welcome to MorningFile. I'm your host, Emma McCarty, and today I am joined with Shannon Raiser from WISE. So just to start off the interview, could you explain what WISE is, what it is the company does, how you guys got your start?
Absolutely. WISE is a global technology company. We are building the best way to move money around the world. So whether it's sending money to another country, spending money abroad, or just making and receiving international payments, we're on a mission to make your life easier and save you money. So WISE has a great story. It started 10 years ago when our founders, Tava and Christo, were both living internationally. So they're both from Estonia. They were living and working in London. Tavet, although working in the UK, was paid in euros because his company was a European company. Christo was paid in British pounds, but had a house in Estonia, so his mortgage was in euros. Month after month, they were losing money, just paying their normal bills because of all the high markups that banks charge and the lack of transparency on the fees. So when they met, they realized they had a very similar problem. So they figured out a fair way to exchange money between themselves using the mid-market rate. And spoiler alert for those of you who don't know what that is, that's if you Google, for example, pounds to euros, Google uses the mid-market rate. By doing this, they avoided all of these markup rates and fees that were charged by the banks, and they were saving thousands of pounds. And they realized that their situations weren't unique. There's millions of people across the globe who were losing money the same way and could benefit from a service like this. And thus, WISE was born.
Yeah, so then kind of tying that into McMaster University and students, how does WISE help international students as well as students that are looking to go abroad? What kind of services can they access from WISE?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, so for example, if you're an international student, you are not going to pay your tuition in your home currency, right? So you would pay your tuition in Canadian dollars. So for example, you would actually be saving a ton of money by using WISE to transfer the money from your home bank account to your school, because you would actually know all of your fees up front, right? So we're big on transparency, not tiny print. So you would actually see any fees that you may be charged up front, but we're also going to use that mid-market rate. We're not going to make up our own rate just so that we can get some extra money from you. So you would be saving a lot of money. Also, if you were a student who, let's say, is from Canada studying abroad, you would save money in the same way. So I have a little breakdown actually that explains that a little better. So for example, if you were going to study at London School of Economics this fall, your tuition would start around 22,000 British pounds, which is 37,000 Canadian dollar. So if you went through a traditional bank, you would pay an exchange rate and transfer fee of approximately $2,000. But because we literally charge roughly 0.67% of the transfer amount, you would be saving $1,800 and your fee would be $200.
Yeah, so which is awesome for students. Yeah.
Yeah, big difference. And again, you know exactly how much you're paying before you ever transfer any money. We, again, don't believe in tiny print. We are going to be very upfront with what you're going to pay.
Mm-hmm. So what type of impacts have international students and students studying abroad seen? Obviously, we're not living in normal times during the pandemic. What type of effects has this had?
I mean, the pandemic, definitely unprecedented. We hear that word all the time, but it's seen huge barriers for students, especially, and international students, I think, even more so. So, a lot of international students have been forced to adjust to remote learning, but they're still paying the same inflated tuition rates, right? So, or for example, if their campus closes, they have mandatory hotel quarantines, but the campus doesn't pay for that, the student does. And then Canadians who are studying abroad, they experience the same exact things. And even if the campuses aren't closed, they might have to stay in a hotel for that 14-day quarantine period, again, at their own cost. and also paying inflated charges for things like food, etc., while they're during that quarantine stay, right? So it's just additional expense on top of an already very expensive time. And I know we kind of plan like eventually those pandemic related expenses should subside, we hope. But the reality is international students will consistently pay higher fees, like on tuition, living expenses, etc., just in general. But when you consider these hidden exchange rates that are incurred through big banks, it adds more on top of it. And because you have no idea what exactly they're going to charge you because they're not transparent, you can expect, we'll say, a transfer of a higher amount, and what you're actually getting is much, much less. So it's a big surprise and not a good one.
Yeah. So obviously, yeah, even in normal times, students are dealing with surprises that they maybe wouldn't expect.
Sure.
What would then be your top 3 tips for students who are going abroad?
My top 3. Well, for starters, definitely explore your digital banking solutions so that you are able to save on those fees and exchange rates, etc. And make sure that you know upfront what you're getting for your money. That's definitely my number 1. Also, always pay in the local currency. It can be confusing sometimes when you're checking out. And I'm going to give you another hypothetical, but if you're purchasing from a merchant who's outside of Canada, it's more costly if you pay in your home currency than in the foreign currency. So just make sure you're paying in whatever the local currency is for what you're buying, if that makes sense. So, and just check real quick beforehand. So, I'll give you for example. I actually ordered something from the UK. I was really excited to get it. And I made sure that when I sent that money that it did go in British pounds versus my local currency. So, and I was able to save so much money versus paying with it like with my normal bank card. So that would definitely be my second one, is just make sure that you check that out before you spend. And also, to that note, if you are living abroad, when you go to check out, like make sure that you're able to pay in the local currency, because you will save more money that way. And I think another big one. So just to give some backstory for my own university experience. So I majored in international business. So my college experience was surrounded by students from all over the place, all over the world. And so one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that scholarships and grants are available to international students and students studying abroad. You do have to know where to find them. And thankfully we have Google, and Google helps us so much, but also check with your school. Don't just immediately write yourself out and say, well, I'm an international student, or, I'm studying abroad, so I wouldn't qualify. It's not always the case, and it's actually not usually the case. So you can check with your school. Also check locally. A lot of local businesses all over the world love sponsoring international students and study abroad students. And on that note, check in your own home city or your own home country, because there's also scholarships and grants that come from where you live that are sponsoring students who are looking to go international. And lastly, just on that scholarship note, look at activities-based scholarships. So again, I was an international business major. I was in a Model United Nations, and they actually had a scholarship for United Nations Club members that we were able to apply for. And being part of the United Nations, Model United Nations, was at no cost to me. It was an extracurricular. But they did offer those opportunities for scholarships. On top of that, they also would have different trips, for example. So I was able to go on different trips with them, and they offered a scholarship like specifically for those trips. So if you have certain activities that are outside of your normal class day that you're participating in, check and see what scholarships are tied to those activities.
Yeah, for sure. Even tying into that, and McMaster students, who I'm sure are the primary listeners to this, I went to McMaster myself and did a summer abroad, and they do for sure have a ton of, I would say, hidden scholarships. Like they're not thrown in your face. You do have to hunt for them, but once you find them, they're pretty easy to figure out or like see if they relate to you type of thing. So definitely, that's an awesome tip.
Yeah, absolutely. And it felt the same way where it was almost like if you didn't dig for it, you wouldn't find it.
Mhm.
So I think hidden scholarships is kind of it's a very good way to describe it. But yeah, definitely do some digging because you can find so many different scholarships and grants that are available. Just hanging out, searching through your laptop.
Yeah, yeah. And even your second point, too, like that's not necessarily for students abroad, but I've never even thought about, like, I guess I personally have been doing a lot more online shopping since we're all at home and I'm scrolling through websites, and I've never thought to switch the currency over, but it would end up saving you a lot more money than just shopping on US sites or whatever you're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so then maybe what would your suggestion be for students who are maybe just starting to become interested in studying abroad? They're looking to save a bit of money. What would maybe help them maximize their savings or even begin the savings process?
Well, I think for starters, my like number one would be get familiar with checking whatever financial account you have or accounts plural, bare minimum once a week. It's really important, especially when you're living in another country, because if you ever have a charge, something that's in your account, or a deduction, a transfer that was taken out that you don't recognize, it's absolutely 100% okay to reach out and say, hey, I don't recognize this. What is it? Because being so familiar with your accounts is the best thing you could ever get in the habit of doing. It's like a cornerstone of financial literacy. So make sure, just put a reminder in your phone. Hey, check my financial accounts, check my bank account. So that way you know, and you can catch any charge that might be fraudulent or maybe just an accident. You can catch that right away and go ahead and dispute it. So that would be my very first one, is get very familiar with your financial accounts. So yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, as far as like a savings process, I think it's kind of to your point, like we are spending, I think, a little bit more money on shopping online, but at the same time, it is easier to save money when you're not able to go out and do other things. So set yourself up with a goal in mind. Say, this is how much I want to save over time in order to reach your goal for when you will be studying abroad. Or even if you're already studying abroad and you just plan to travel where you are, go out once the lockdowns and stuff have been lifted. And then just make sure that whoever you are banking with or conducting any kind of financial transactions, like do your research, do your homework, because fine print, tiny letters, like those things end up costing so much in the long run. And that's your money. So try to make sure that you have a good understanding of where that money is going to, and do the research. We actually have on the WISE website, we have a comparison tool. So if you're looking at how much it's going to cost, for example, for tuition to convert from one currency to another, you can actually go on wise.com and put in those amounts, and we have a comparison tool. So if we're not the lowest, we'll tell you who is. So make sure that you're doing your homework as far as like which company is going to give you the best rate.
Yeah, for sure. So we've discussed a ton of tips and tricks for students. What would, maybe to wrap up this video, be your number one tip for a student looking to go abroad or come to Canada internationally?
I say number one would definitely be just always check before you make a payment. Goes for anything: tuition, books, groceries, rent, whatever. Just make sure that you check before making a payment that you are getting the best rate, and not overpaying or paying any extra fees.
Okay, awesome. So then I guess my final question then is, where can students go to access your website and learn more about WISE?
So our website's wise.com. We also have an app in the App Store. So yeah, you can go there. And again, transparency is a cornerstone, it's the foundation of all that we do. So we have tons of information on wise.com, on our app. You can even go to our social media pages, and you can learn all kinds of stuff about how to better navigate the financial world as well.
Thank you so much to Shannon from Wise for chatting with me today. To learn more about Wise, you can click the link below. And as always, for more MorningFile content, you can visit cfmu.ca/videos.